There is a kind of fasting that makes the kingdom of darkness tremble, not because you skip a meal, but because your spirit begins to rise with an authority that hell cannot challenge. You see, the enemy has worked for years, sometimes decades, to build patterns of defeat in your life. He builds them quietly, through habits you no longer question, through lies you have accepted as truth, through moments of disappointment that settled into your soul like concrete. And as long as your flesh remains in control, the enemy remains undisturbed. But when you begin to fast, something begins to shift, not just in your body, but deep in your spirit. The noise fades, the cravings lose their grip, and suddenly, the voice of God that once seemed so far away becomes clear again. I have seen it with my own eyes. Men and women who live for years under heaviness, under oppression, not knowing that a spiritual war had been raging over their minds and families, and when they humbled themselves through fasting, not out of ritual, but out of desperation for God, the atmosphere began to change. It is not about punishing yourself. It is about realigning your soul with heaven. The devil does not fear empty stomachs. He fears emptied hearts, hearts emptied of pride, of noise, of excuses. Because when a person comes before God like that, surrendered and open, strongholds begin to break, darkness begins to lift, chains begin to loosen. You may be walking through something right now that feels invisible but heavy. You have tried solutions, read books, even prayed prayers. But something still presses against your life like a weight you cannot explain. That weight is not always emotional or physical. Sometimes it is spiritual. And spiritual problems require spiritual answers. That is why fasting is not optional for a believer who desires breakthrough. It is the difference between fighting in your own strength and letting God fight for you. The truth is, many people are living with walls around their heart that were not built by God. And those walls will not fall by wishful thinking. They fall when we choose to crucify the flesh, when we choose to be silent before God long enough to hear Him speak again. Fasting does that. It silences the appetite of the flesh, so the whisper of the Spirit can be heard. And in that whisper is your answer. In that stillness is your victory. You do not need more activity, more advice, or more noise. What you need is space for God to be God again. That is what fasting creates. Sacred space in a loud and cluttered life. A holy stillness in a storm of distractions. And in that space, everything begins to change. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer it not with your mind, but with your heart. Is there something in your life that has refused to move no matter how much you pray? A cycle you keep falling into? A weight that lingers even when everything on the outside seems fine? Many people live their whole lives trimming the leaves of a problem, never touching the root. But God is not in the business of trimming. He is in the business of uprooting. Jesus said, "Every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted shall be rooted up." That means there are things growing in your life right now that didn't come from Him. Habits, patterns, wounds, thoughts that seem normal but are actually the fruit of spiritual oppression. And here is the truth. Some of those things did not just show up yesterday. The enemy has spent years planting them carefully, layer by layer, lie by lie. He builds his work in silence, but when you enter into fasting with real, intense prayer, those works begin to collapse. Fasting is not a tool to impress God. It is the cry of a spirit tired of being tangled in invisible chains. It is the shout of someone who knows that prayer alone has not broken what needs to be broken. When you fast and pray together, you create a collision between heaven and everything that hell tried to build against you. Strongholds don't just crack, they shatter. I have seen it in prisons, in hospitals, in quiet rooms where people were so desperate for freedom that they finally let go of their routine and pressed into God. And things began to fall off them. Things that no human hand could remove. Now I ask you, do you want that kind of breakthrough? Do you believe that what the Father did for others, He can do for you? If your heart is whispering yes, if something inside you is stirring, then I invite you to take one small step. Just type Tôi sẵn sàng, or even the number mo. That simple act says, I am not here to just listen. I am here to be changed. And I thank you, not just for hearing me, but for letting me know I am not speaking alone. Your presence here is a gift, and your hunger for more is the beginning of something powerful. There is a kind of fasting that goes beyond hunger and touches the throne of heaven, not through silence, but through sound. The sound of praise rising in the midst of weakness. Many people fast with their mouths closed in discipline, but keep their spirits closed in silence. What they miss is this: worship is not a decoration of faith. It is a weapon. In the spirit realm, praise is not passive. It is warfare. When you combine fasting with continual worship, something powerful begins to happen. The atmosphere shifts. The air becomes charged with the presence of God. And wherever His presence is real, darkness loses its grip. This is why the enemy hates praise, not because it is emotional, but because it is foundational. Praise invites God to sit where the problem once ruled, and when God sits, the enemy runs. In the Old Testament, there were moments when armies did not need swords. They needed singers. Jehoshaphat was not commanded to send warriors first. He was told to send worshipers. And as they sang, their enemies turned on each other. That is not just history. That is revelation. When you praise while fasting, you are not just resisting temptation. You are creating an atmosphere where demons cannot breathe. They suffocate in the presence of true worship. They scatter when the name of the Lord is lifted high. Fasting makes your flesh weak, but worship makes your spirit strong. And when the flesh is weak and the spirit is strong, you become a vessel that the enemy cannot touch. This is not about volume. It is about surrender. It is not about performance. It is about posture. Are you posturing your soul to adore the one who breaks every yoke? Or are you simply passing the time hoping the fast will end soon? Do not waste your fast. Fill it with songs. Fill it with thanksgiving. Fill it with the kind of praise that shakes the foundations of your situation. Because when you praise in weakness, heaven hears strength. And that sound is what makes hell tremble. Fasting is not just about what you remove from your plate. It is about what you remove from your life. Many people ask why their spiritual walk feels powerless, why they lose their temper so easily, why they pray but hear no answer. Yet their days are filled with endless scrolling, constant noise, shallow entertainment, and fleeting distractions. You cannot feed the flesh all day and expect the spirit to rise in power. When your eyes are filled with the world, your heart becomes blind to heaven. This is why some of the most powerful fasts are not from food. but from the habits that keep your soul numb. Turn off the noise. Set down the phone. Step away from the things that entertain your flesh, but starve your spirit. There are influences around you that seem harmless, but they are slowly draining your hunger for God. The enemy rarely attacks you in obvious ways. He slips in through convenience, comfort, repetition. He hides in the habits you no longer question. That is where he builds his system, where he nurtures spiritual apathy. But when you begin to fast from these things, you start to unplug from his network. You begin to say no to the things that have kept you spiritually lazy. You make space, and that space becomes sacred. In that stillness, God does what he could not do in your noise. He speaks. He corrects. He strengthens. You begin to feel again, see again, hear again. Your inner world shifts. This kind of fasting is not antisocial. It is not legalistic. It is strategic. You are not running away from life. You are running toward clarity. Even Jesus withdrew from the crowd to seek the Father. If he needed silence to be strengthened, how much more do we? The question is not if God will speak. The question is whether you have created enough space to listen. Fasting is not punishment. It is preparation. It is how you choose to stop listening to everything that does not bring life, so your spirit can begin to live again. When you fast from the things that feed the flesh, you start to awaken the part of you that longs for something deeper, something eternal, something real. And in that awakening, the voice of God becomes undeniable. There is a kind of fasting that does not ask for things, but asks for sight. Not physical sight, but the ability to see what is hidden beneath the surface. Many believers walk through life unaware of the real battle taking place around them. They face confusion, delay, and struggle, but never see the spiritual hand behind it. The enemy works in darkness, and his greatest weapon is deception. He does not need to destroy you if he can keep you blind to his tactics, blind to your calling, blind to the spiritual reasons behind your natural pain. That is why fasting that seeks revelation is so powerful. It removes the veil. It brings light into places that have been dark for years. This kind of fasting is not about asking God to fix a problem. It is about asking him to show you what the problem really is. There are things in your life that look like coincidence, but they are patterns, delays that are not just circumstantial, but demonic resistant. You will never fight what you do not see. You will never rebuke what you have not discerned. In the book of Daniel, the prophet fasted not for blessing, but for understanding. He needed clarity, and in response, heaven sent an angel. But even that angel was delayed, not by accident, but by a prince of darkness. That tells us something. Even when you do not see it, war is taking place over the answers to your prayer. When you fast with a heart that seeks understanding, you step into that war with authority. You begin to pray, not just in emotion, but in insight. You begin to stand not just in faith, but in revelation. The enemy fears this kind of believer because once you see the truth, you can no longer be manipulated by the lie. Once you see the trap, you stop walking into it. Once your spiritual eyes are open, the enemy loses his power. Fasting that brings revelation will expose motives, reveal hidden sin, uncover generational patterns, and shine a light on the areas of your life where the enemy has been hiding in plain sight. And in that light, everything changes. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop guessing and start hearing. You stop surviving and start living by the voice of God. That kind of clarity is not cheap. It requires consecration. It requires fasting with a heart that says, Lord, I do not just want help. I want vision. Because once you see, you are no longer a victim. You become a warrior. When you begin to fast with purpose, do not be surprised when resistance rises. The enemy does not attack what does not threaten him. He waits until you touch something dangerous to his kingdom. And then he moves. You feel a sudden heaviness, a strange fatigue, an unexplained sense of failure. Your mind begins to doubt. Your body grows tired, and your emotions spiral. But this is not a sign that your fasting is failing. It is proof that it is working. Hell fights what heaven is about to bless. When you fast, you do not just step into discipline. You step onto a battlefield. The discomfort, the hunger, the mental fog, the emotional weight, they are not the fast. They are the war. And every moment you choose to press through, you are tearing down walls the enemy built for years. Many give up too soon because they mistake pressure for failure. But pressure is the sound of spiritual progress. It means the ground beneath the enemy is starting to crack. Your fast is weakening what he tried to make permanent. Do not measure your fast by how you feel. Measure it by what you are breaking. Chains do not snap quietly. Strongholds do not fall politely. The louder the resistance, the closer the breakthrough. The enemy cannot stop the hand of God, so he tries to stop your pursuit of it. He whispers that nothing is changing, that your efforts are empty, that this is just a waste of time. But fasting is not about immediate evidence. It is about faithful endurance. It is the silence before the storm of glory. And make no mistake, the storm is coming. The shaking you feel is not the end. It is the start of a collapse. The enemy's structure is trembling because you refuse to stay comfortable. You chose to fight on your knees. So hold the line. Keep your heart fixed. Keep your focus clear. Fast, not with frustration, but with fire. Because every battle in the invisible is shaping something unstoppable in the visible. The day will come when what you pressed through in silence will be your victory in the open. And when it comes, you will know that the resistance was never a sign of defeat. It was the sound of hell losing its grip. Let me ask you something today, and be honest with your soul. As you answer it, have you been fasting? But deep down, you feel like nothing is shifting? Have you gone without food? Turned down your plate, but still find yourself battling the same thoughts? The same temptations, the same emptiness? If so, I need to tell you this with all clarity. Fasting by itself is not the breakthrough. It is what you combine with it that brings the power. Some people are starving their bodies, but feeding their bitterness. Some have shut off meals, but left the door wide open for pride, gossip, distraction, and spiritual dryness. That kind of fasting is not spiritual, it is just physical discomfort. Fasting without prayer is starvation. Fasting without worship is a diet. Fasting without repentance is a ritual. But when you bring them all together, something shifts in the heavens. When you fast and seek, when you fast and surrender, when you fast and worship, when you fast and cry out for understanding, when you fast and declare deliverance over your life, then fasting becomes fire, not a fire that destroys you, but a fire that purifies everything inside of you that is not from God. That is why the enemy loves to make fasting mechanical. He wants you to do it religiously, not relationally. He wants you to count the hours, but not count the cost. He wants you to feel hungry in your body, but still stay weak in your spirit. I ask you today, are you fasting to check a box? Or are you fasting to touch heaven? Are you denying your flesh while still entertaining the lies of the enemy? Or are you choosing to walk into the holy fire of God's presence and be changed from the inside out? If you are ready to make this personal, if you are ready to stop doing religious things and start experiencing spiritual power, then let this be your moment. Let this be where fasting becomes more than an act. It becomes a weapon. And if something in your heart is stirring right now, if you feel the Spirit calling you into a deeper surrender, then I invite you to respond. Just write Toi Sansang, or simply type the number 1, not for me, for you, to declare that you are not here to play games with your faith. You are here to be transformed. And let me say this, seeing your presence, knowing you are with me in this journey, that is more meaningful than you can imagine. It reminds me that I am not speaking alone, that somewhere, someone is choosing breakthrough over comfort, surrender over routine. And that, my friend, is the beginning of real change. You have fasted. But are you free? You have prayed. But are you changed? There comes a moment when every believer must ask, is what I am doing leading me closer to the presence of God? Or have I settled for spiritual routine without spiritual power? The greatest tragedy is not that people suffer, but that they suffer while sitting next to the answer. Jesus is not a concept. He is not a memory. He is the living one, the chain breaker, the restorer of everything the enemy has stolen. But his presence is not something we visit occasionally. It is something we must pursue intentionally. Fasting is not a formula to manipulate God. It is an invitation for God to take his rightful place again. It is your soul saying, Lord, I cannot do this on my own. I do not want another week of going through the motions. I need you here. I need you now. And when fasting becomes that cry, something begins to happen that no demon can stop. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours. You stop explaining pain that has a spiritual root. You stop tolerating what God called you to drive out. And as the flesh weakens, the Spirit takes command. You begin to speak differently, walk differently, worship differently. Because you are no longer praying from the surface. You are praying from the secret place. You are no longer guessing. You are moving with revelation. And in that place, God begins to rebuild what was broken, restore what was wasted, and release what was delayed. But make no mistake, the enemy does not give up easily. He will come again. He will try again. But you will not be the same person he once tricked. Because now you see, now you hear, now you fight not with emotion, but with truth. Not with panic, but with peace. Because you have seen the Lord in the wilderness. And when you see him there, you carry him everywhere. This is the power of consecration. This is the reward of surrender, not just victory over one situation, but transformation in your inner being, a shift that no one can see, but everyone will notice. And now, I urge you, do not stop here. Do not return to old patterns. This is the hour to go deeper, to let the fire that started in your fast burn into every part of your life. In the next video, We will speak of how to carry this flame into your daily walk, how to sustain what God has begun, and how to become a vessel that hell fears and heaven uses. You are not weak. You are not lost. You are called. You are chosen. And the journey of surrender is only beginning. Let us walk it together. The best is yet to come.